Hello everybody and welcome to Whiz, your family-friendly podcast where we discuss D&D Onslaught, Dice Masters, HeroClix, and the other entertaining games made by WizKids. I'm WizDad, that one crazy good cooldown ability that has a wicked long recharge time, so you save me for just that right moment, but realize at the end of the game, that moment was way back in round 1. I will be your guide for navigating the competitive and casual scenes of the WizKids Triforce of gaming. It's Onslaught Wednesday today in honor of Frogmire Coven release month. I'm going to talk about each scenario in the expansion. I may not get through all of them today. We might break them down and spread it out through a couple episodes. But I'll break down my experiences with them, talk about them a little bit, and kind of give you a little bit more hype if you're on the edge about buying the Frogmire Coven. Once again, I fully recommend it. Spoilers! But first, as always, it is the WizKids Progress Report.
Kowalski, Progress Report.
So for this episode's Progress Report, it's kind of more of just a reminder. First off, reminder that the Frogmire Coven expansion for Onslaught does release this month. I believe the official date for it is the 25th, so we got till the end of the month, like just in line with Halloween. It should be coming up around then, so just keep that in mind. Like, that's a good I mean, you don't really do Halloween presents, but it's a good time for that. Additionally, before that, the storyline OP pack, the Ancient Construct, we've talked about it multiple times. It comes out this time next week, the 11th. I know my store hasn't gotten it yet. I feel like some stores have. We ordered ours late, so that might be part of the reason. But definitely check it out. Definitely make sure you also look into, if your store hasn't ordered it, see if it's still available for pre-order or order on Alliance or wherever your store gets their product. And then the other thing I would like to emphasize once again, Onslaught has really found its home on Discord. That is where a lot of discussion happens. That's really where the game is talked about, is on Discord. The designers are in the server. There's a lot of fun stuff going on. I post videos in there when available. So definitely check it out. The confusing part is that there is 2 D&D Onslaught Discords. The correct one is the one that has the Onslaught logo. I will try my best to post a link. I don't know if I could post a link in my podcast description for a Discord, because I don't know if it'll be a permanent link. But either way, you can check out the Facebook if you really need to. I will post it on my Facebook page sometime later today. So in case you're interested in joining the Discord, just click on it and join. A wealth of information to be found there. Outside of that, there's really not much to talk about. We are in what I like to call the preseason or the slow season of WizKids gaming. You know, Worlds happened a couple of weeks ago, I guess like 3 weeks ago at this point. And so we're now into the section of, now through the end of the year, we have some releases, but we don't, 2024 is around the corner, and that's where we get, a lot more exciting things. So let's go ahead and hop into Fishing with WizDad, where we will talk about the Frogmire Coven and start our scenario review.
Get your gear, little man. We're going fishing. And I mean now.
So since I got an advanced copy of the Frogmire Coven, and I really wanted to, I still need to record a video of an unboxing. I will write that down on my to-do list. I have a long to-do list, guys. But I figured since it's the release month, we'll spend the next week or two going through the different scenarios, breaking down the expansion a bit, so that way you know what you're getting when you buy the game, right? It's a beautiful box. It's very cool looking. Froghemoth, the hags, all of that stuff. Very, very cool. But if you're buying into the game, you've bought the base set or the fundamental set, you're like, man, I don't know if I want to pay for the expansion, which once again, the expansion is not the same cost as the core set. Don't don't think for a second it's that price point. If I remember correctly, it is $89.99 for the Frogmire expansion. So it's not the 140 MSRP. It is definitely cheaper, and it comes with multiple minis. Let's see, 7 pre-painted minis, 1 multi-part pre-painted Froghemoth miniature that has like a body, eye stalks, tentacles, and then the pre-painted minis, a game board that has two-sided maps, 1 dial card, a bunch of standard cards, mini cards, tokens, terrain elements, and scenario guides. So you cannot use just this to play Onslaught. You could. If you use like a proxy list or you got the fundamentals, you need character cards. It does not come with any factions or anything like that. It is purely an expansion, which is a-okay. But I figure we'll break down some of the things in the expansion. Let's talk about the scenarios so you know what you're getting into and what kind of depth you're getting with the game. Because it's easy to say, oh, it's an expansion, but Onslaught, as I know it, is a 1v1 skirmish game. So what's the point? Well, Frogmire Coven presents a kind of unique... it's literally called an expansion. But the way I look at it, and after talking with the designers at WizKids Worlds, you look at the core game, and the core game, while complicated because it is a board game, it is fairly basic. The scenarios built in is, oh, get this loot, come back. Oh, go to the control point, take out this monster. It is very, very basic. There's not a lot of depth to it because it's a base core game, right? You don't want to add too much depth to it because then you're going to be very confused. It's going to confuse a lot of people, essentially. So that is taken away in Frogmire Coven. Frogmire Coven adds a lot of depth to the game. The scenarios have an extra wrinkle to them. You're no longer just trying to pick up loot and run away. As you'll see soon, you have multiple objectives that are different type of objectives. The maps are significantly more, significantly more complicated. It's not just a simple asymmetrical map. It's now, oh, we're in a swamp. There's water, there's bridges, there's certain land masses you can get to easily, otherwise you move a lot slower. It's very interesting, very, very interesting. So I'm going to start things off by starting at the beginning of the book. Now, I am not going to spoil any of the story. There's a loose story in there, the reason why you're going through these different scenarios. I believe there are let me see, there are 6 scenarios in the book. I guess I should say 6 story scenarios, if you want to say it's a story. Man, that's tricky to say. Basically, it's not like there's an overarching campaign from the base game to Frogmire, but they do give you think of it like a one-shot almost. Kind of give you a little, here's why you're doing this. Oh, here's why you're at this scenario. To kind of give you an explanation of why things are happening in this scenario. So the game comes with 6 of those type of scenarios that are all interlinking. They all kind of go together, but they don't have to be played together. They can be played in any order you want, but if you want to follow this narrative that has been written, you need to start from 1 and go to 6. And then it also contains 2 other scenarios, one of them being called Battle Royale, so it's like a 3 to 4 player scenario. So it expands the game further from a 1v1 to now a 4 player. It's a very, very cool concept. We'll get to that probably next week. And then finally, there is the Plague scenario. It is actually a solo scenario that you can play by yourself, kind of like a Gloomhaven-esque. You set things up and you're able to progress through it on your own. Not probably to the depth of Gloomhaven, because you have level ups and stuff like that. In this, it's just a fun experience, a fun one-off scenario to just play through. But first we'll start with the 6. And those scenarios take you through the swamp and through the nightmare that is the Frogmire Coven. So the thing this expansion begins with is, first off, you get 18 new item tokens. Or item cards, I should say. And so that takes us up to now 54 item cards, because you have the core set, you have the Benefactor expansion set, which was just that little box that had the why am I blanking on it? I want to say Spectator because I've been playing Baldur's Gate, but basically has the eye stalk thing on it. Man, I'm sure you're yelling at me, oh, it's this, but for whatever reason I'm blanking on it. But basically it is a expansion that really relies on you having your own minis. It uses some of the original map. Beholder is what I couldn't think of, by the way. Yes, I did come to it. I did Google it real quick. But basically the Benefactor, I haven't actually played through that scenario yet, but it's a scenario that doesn't have a map or anything. It just adds on to the pre-existing things. Perfectly fine. But that also comes with 18 item cards, and it is a good 18 item cards. Like, those are arguably way better than the core game. The Frogmire Coven ones are a little different. As mentioned in the book, it says cursed items. Several of the item cards in this expansion contains the cursed keyword and feature a darker background. When a character loots a chest, if no event tokens are drawn, the character must reveal all item tokens drawn, gather their corresponding items cards. If these item cards contain one or more cursed items, a cursed item must be chosen and immediately equipped. Cursed items cannot be unequipped, dropped, or given to other characters. When a character performs a basic attack, they must use a cursed weapon if available. So for example, they show the Axe of Bloodthirst. It says cursed on it, and it says you cannot make ranged attacks. Close attack, Axe of Bloodlust, standard. I think that's the arcane symbol. Target one enemy at range 1, plus 7 to hit, 3 damage, critical you heal 2. So it is better than your close attack, your standard close. Probably most of your standard closes are plus 7 to hit, 3 damage, and you don't heal on a crit. But you can no longer make ranged attacks. So that is that's interesting. It fits the narrative of Frogmire Coven. I don't know if you'll play that in a competitive game, but I need to actually look into the competitive rules on how they're going to handle item cards now that we're getting more. Because from my understanding, the way I read it, when you're setting up for a tournament, like you're joining a tournament, you bring a set of players must choose 15 item cards that match loot tokens 1 through 15 and record their choices on their roster. So you have to have the item cards that match the loot tokens. So I assume you can mix and match. I didn't actually do that before. I just either played the core set or the Benefactor. I never thought about mixing and matching. But if you can, hey, you never know, there might be a cursed item that's better. That is interesting, though. Additionally, in this game, they introduced bridge tokens. Each scenario contains a number of bridges, because obviously there's a lot of water. Whole lot of water. And water terrain is treated as hindering terrain for movement only and does not affect line of sight or cover. So effectively, when you want to move through water, it costs 2 movement as opposed to 1 movement, because that's how hindering works. And there's let me tell you, a lot of water. So that's why you have bridges. Each scenario features a number of bridge terrain tokens, which are treated as open terrain. In addition, the 1x3 and 1x4 bridges can be picked up by an adjacent character as a bonus action if there are no miniatures overlapping it. So they can pick up a bridge if no one's on it. All other bridges are fixed and cannot be moved. A character who picks up a bridge removes it from the map and places it near their character card to indicate that the character is now carrying that bridge. A character carrying a bridge may place it adjacent to themselves as a bonus action. Bridges must be placed on top of or adjacent to a land, not non-water space. Bridges can overlap land or water spaces, but not spaces with miniatures, other bridges, elevation hindering or blocking. Carried bridges can be given to an adjacent friendly character as a bonus action, and you can only carry one bridge. So it makes sense. You pick up a bridge, you put it down. It has to be touching or adjacent to some sort of land, and that land can't be put over things. It makes sense. When you're playing this game, for starting parties, they say before playing the first scenario in this expansion, each player must choose 6 characters to form their starting party, each with a different role. At least 5 of these characters must be from the same faction, and up to 1 character may be from the Sellswords faction. And then they they show a couple of different tokens, condition tokens. There's poison, which we've seen before from the Red Wizards. I believe it's a Red Wizard. And then there's bleeding, and then there's ethereal. Fading, a miniature with ethereal token cannot suffer damage from any source. And then we just hop into the first scenario. The first scenario is known as the Rescue. The Rescue deals with prisoners on the map. It is on one of the more watery swamp map. And basically the 2 players start in 2 sections of the map, 2 opposite corners of the map. There are your typical treasure tokens. There are prisoners, quite a few prisoners. There are Kobold Ritualist, Bullywug Ambushers, and the Yuan-Ti Archer. I will say from experience, the Bullywug Ambusher is a menace and very, very interesting to have to play against. This dives into a little bit more of what I was talking about with an elevated level of play, where before the kobolds and the gnolls were fairly straightforward. And I don't honestly know if there was a ton of range from the NPCs in the main set. Here, decent amount of more range. So you set up the map for the Rescue, as indicated. You put out the Kobold Ritualist, the Bullywug Ambusher, the Yuan-Ti Archer cards. You give them their initiatives. Cool. You do kind of the general setup you normally do. Roll 2d6, or 2d6. There's my hero clicks eking out a bit. Now you roll the 2d20 to determine who goes first. What's different though is the active player chooses 2 of their characters to begin as prisoners and places them in 2 Party 1 prisoner spaces, and that's marked off on the map. Next, the other player chooses 2 of their characters to begin as prisoners and places them in the 2 Party 2 prisoner spaces, and places 3 of their other characters in the starting area. Finally, the active player places 3 of their non-prisoner characters in the Party 1 starting area. Makes sense. So effectively what happens in this scenario is you go in with a party of 5, you start with a party of 3. You determine at the beginning what 2 you want to become prisoners. What does it mean to be prisoners? Well, there are special rules for that. Prisoners do not activate, cannot take any actions or reactions, and cannot be attacked. However, character prisoners, so the 2 that you put in there, are assigned initiative cards as normal. Their activations are skipped while they remain prisoners. A character may rescue 1 adjacent prisoner at the end of their activation. Non-character prisoners are removed from the map when rescued. Character prisoners that are rescued can henceforth activate as normal, including during the round in which they are rescued, provided their initiative card has not already been passed. So, if you're playing a game, you know that you're coming up on your prisoner, you can, your prisoner, I guess, you can lay out your initiatives to where, I have 4 and 5, my character can reach them on 4, that'll free them on 5, and now that person could go. If an enemy ends their activation next to one or more prisoners, one adjacent prisoner is sacrificed and removed from the map. Character prisoners cannot be sacrificed until all non-character prisoners are rescued or sacrificed. Keep the sacrificed prisoners in a separate pile from the rescued prisoners, because they are for counting purposes. What do you mean for counting purposes, WizDad? Easy. Let me tell you the objectives. And that's kind of the point of scenarios, is the objectives, right? So the objectives: rescue your friends, enemies, and everyone in between while fending off the kobolds and the bullywugs. Defeat a bullywug ambusher gets you 2 victory points. I will say that is not as easy as you think it would be. They could be a menace. Defeat the Yonti archer, 3 victory points. Rescue a prisoner, 1 victory point. You gain an additional victory point for rescuing a character prisoner from the opposing party. So you could run out there, enter activation next to an opposing character. That means they get to activate on their next activation, but you get 2 victory points for that. 1 because it's a prisoner, and then an additional 1 because it's a character prisoner of the other side. Then you have one of your characters sacrificed, minus 1 victory points. The next time you choose that character in this campaign, it starts the scenario bloodied. So you can see how there's a little bit of a continuation of the game where if you don't, and remember, to be sacrificed as a character, you have to have no more regular prisoners on the map. Character prisoners cannot be sacrificed until all non-character prisoners are rescued or sacrificed. This game is supposed to go 8 rounds, or the prisoners are all rescued or sacrificed. You record the number of prisoners who were rescued, and then there's something at the game end called I'm Keeping This. Each player chooses 1 item equipped to one of their characters, sets it and its corresponding loot token aside, and records this information. The next time that character is selected, it begins play equipped and with the chosen item. If a player's characters are equipped with the curse item, that curse item must be chosen. So pretty self-explanatory. From my experience with playing this, because this was one of the tournament scenarios at Worlds, it's a lot of fun because out of all those objectives that I read, none of them mentioned getting victory points for taking out your opponent, taking out any of their characters, outside of like them losing points for you sacrificing one of their characters. I will say we never got to the point of sacrificing characters because we either ran for our own characters or we just didn't finish all the prisoners. The way it's set up, there are 2 of your characters, 1 on each team. They are kind of more in the middle of the map, and then the other 2 characters, 1 for each team, is really in the corner, the opposite corner of where you start. And so you really have to like book it out of your way to get over there, and because there's a lot of water, it's not super cohesive. I know with the one match I played, I ultimately didn't even go for that character. I put my 5 in, and I put my slower characters as prisoners, because I knew if they activated, well, they're going to be in the middle of the fray. So my characters that have like a 3 movement, a 4 movement, 3 movement, stuff like that. It is, those are the ones that I wanted prisoners. And that also means they're the more beefy characters. So that means if my opponent somehow activates them for me and then decides they're going to wallop it, well, they could take a hit. I also wanted my main 3 to be my fast characters. So in this case, I played Red Wizards. And for the Red Wizards, I played Staghar, because I love Staghar. And Staghar has a 5 movement. 5 movement druid I thought would be great. I also wanted the Wildfire Spirit to be able to kind of mitigate some of the damage. And burning damage actually came up a lot in this. I played Staghar. I played Vendra, because Vendra is the ranger, 4 movement ranger, if you don't remember. But also Vendra has Writhing Tide, which is a movement cooldown ability. Move up to 6 spaces, ignoring elevation and enemies. Minis move through this, gain bleeding. It's a 3-turn cooldown, so you're going to be able to use that multiple times a game. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean hindering, so Vendra doesn't get to just kind of move through a bunch of hindering. But it was key. Like, being able to do a double move bigger than normal. So like standard move, sack it for move to move 4, and then do Writhing Tide to move 6. So I'm effectively moving 10 was fine. It was great, and being able to do that multiple times was also nice. Or just in general, just being able to just move 6 and then attack was great. Vendra actually probably was MVP that map. She rescued one of my characters and then prevented my opponent from rescuing one of my other characters. So, and then the last character I chose was the Warlock one. Not Zook. Who was it? It was Fairloon of Scardale, the Warlock. Because I knew I wanted range. I wanted some ranged attacks for the Yanti Archer or for the Bullywugs. I wanted to be able to target him for range. I battled this whole time with Fairloon. I'm still on the fence about Fairloon, about how much I actually like him. But that's neither here nor there. So I chose fast characters to go get my slow characters. My slow characters were Drom, because I had him on my team. And the other one was Basra, because I liked Basra. Now, there were some nuances with Basra that I found out I didn't like so much. But they were both fairly slow, beefy characters. So that's why I chose them. The way I played it was I simply started out, while the map isn't asymmetrical, well, I guess it is technically asymmetrical. It's just kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but it is, you have the same size starting area on both sides. It's just flipped. So if you cut the map in half, you'd have to like flip it around to show that it's not exactly asymmetrical. It's like a oblong symmetrical. I don't know how to explain it, but if you cut it in half, it does work if you flip it around. But basically, I started out with I had Vendra move south. If I would say I was player 1, and this is terrible for a podcast to try to do some visual stuff, but basically, I didn't have a problem Vendra trying to move through the water. It was slow, but there is basically each person has a land closer to them that has 4 prisoners on them, non-player prisoners. So I had Vendra go straight for that. There's some kobolds near it, but not enough to be dangerous. And I knew Vendra could get pretty close to it. So I had Vendra go by herself, and then I had Staghar and Fairloon go across the bridge to go towards the Bullywug ambushers, the Yanti Archer, and where a prisoner and the character prisoner was. The character prisoners are actually a few scores away from the Yanti Archer. So you can't just ignore the Archer. You have to keep it in mind as you're going. I won't go into too much detail about how my game went. I ultimately won because of certain placements of how I did things. And I was able to get to their character because he basically ran up and then got his character from the corner. I ran up and got his character to gain myself an extra victory point, so that way I had the lead. It was a fun game. I like the aspect that it doesn't inhibit or discourage you from it doesn't discourage you from fighting the opponent, but it does discourage you from because it is good to start fighting the opponent to slow them down potentially. That is probably something smart to do. It does not mean that you need to actively engage. You know what I'm saying? It means that you don't have to get in there and go to town and fight them. It's more of just rescue people, man. That's your point, is to rescue people. We did not play with the item rules, obviously, because this was a tournament scenario, so it was slightly different than this one. But it is interesting nonetheless. It was probably my favorite scenario. Yeah, it was my favorite scenario. Because I do like PvP where it's not just deathmatch, where it's not just I'm trying to... control point. It's where I have to engage with NPCs. I might have to engage with your characters. I might try to slow you down. But it's a race. It's a race to save prisoners and to take out NPCs. I like those type of scenarios. And so this was scenario 1 in Frogmire Coven. It is just kind of the beginning. You go into the swamp and you are rescuing people, prisoners. The next scenario, which probably will be the last one of this episode we'll talk about, is called The Ritual. I did not play The Ritual. This ended up being, I think, the finals match. The Ritual is played on the other side of the map, which is more of like the Forgotten Temple looking side. A lot more land, a lot less water. Like the water's restricted to more like canals, weaving in and out. On this map, there is zombies. Zombies spawn spaces. There are bullywug bodyguards. There's a sea hag, and there's kobold acolytes. Basically, you set up the map as indicated in the diagram. You give the sea hag, bullywug bodyguard, kobold acolytes, loot goblin, and mire zombie monster cards near the map, and assign them the initiative cards specified. You place those mire zombie tokens on the spawn spaces numbered 1 through 3, and then for each prisoner that was sacrificed in the rescue, add an additional mire zombie up to a maximum of 9 zombies following the number of zombie spawn spaces in order. So there we go, kind of more of the, okay, how did you do in that first scenario? Because the second scenario, if you lost a lot of prisoners, which prisoners were mostly sacrificed by, if you just let them be, the kobolds will go towards the prisoner and take it out. I didn't really talk about that much, but it says here, Kobold Ritualist. When a Kobold Ritualist activates, if a character is adjacent, it does not move. Otherwise, it moves towards the closest non-character prisoner as directly as possible, stopping if it becomes adjacent to a character or prisoner. Then attacks the closest character if able. So, if it gets next to a prisoner, it sacrifices that prisoner. The Bullywug Ambushers and the Yanti Archers do not. It is really just the Ritualists. Back to scenario 2. The player who won the rescue, this is the choosing characters. The player who won the rescue scenario chooses to be party 1 or 2 and places 3 of their characters in their party's 2x2 starting area. Then the other character chooses 3 of their characters to place them in the 2x2. The winning player then chooses 2 of their characters and places them in their parties 1x2, and the next person does the same. Prepare for loot. You remove the 2 portcullis key tokens and 2 mimic tokens, and then form the loot pool with the remaining tokens, etc., etc. The special rules in this one is that the bridges are there. We've talked about that. It does say each person chooses one of their non-prisoner characters to begin the scenario carrying a 1x3 bridge token. I don't know if they meant to say that. Choose non-prisoner characters. It's not as if you have a prisoner character in this one. The ritual. At the end of each round, if the sea hag is undefeated, spawn up to 2 mire zombies in the lowest available numbered mire zombie spawn spaces to a maximum of 9 mire zombies. If a mire zombie would spawn when there are already 9 mire zombies, all non-summon characters suffer 1 irreducible damage. So that means if you just try to ignore the zombies, you will start taking damage. Pretty cool. And guess what? You don't get any points for taking out zombies. Objectives: sneak past or slay your way through rivals and zombie horde and disrupt the Sea Hag's foul ritual. You defeat a Bullywug bodyguard, you get 1 victory point. Defeat an enemy character, 1 victory point, so a little bit of deathmatch is back. Loot a chest, you get 2 victory points. Defeat the Sea Hag, you get 2. And deal the most damage to the Sea Hag, you get 2. So it's not just you get the final kill. If you only deal 1 damage, the other person did a bunch more, well, you both get 2. For activation purposes, the Sea Hag Does not activate until a zombie has been defeated or she has suffered damage. When she activates, she moves towards the closest character as directly as possible, and she attacks the closest character with repelling glare. After this attack, if there is still an adjacent character, she attacks with claws. So, very, very interesting. I know that the zombies do a decent amount of damage. Now, at the game end, once again, similar to the last time, you choose one item equipped, and you get to keep it going on. And if it's cursed, well, then you're gonna have to keep that cursed item regardless. That's what you're keeping. But yeah, so this scenario is really, you're kind of rushing in, trying to take out the Sea Hag, trying to stop the ritual that's happening with the prisoners, I guess is how I would say it. And it's because there's the aspect of getting victory points for taking out an opposing character. It's not exactly like I was saying before of like a PvE type of scenario. It is definitely kind of a mix of both. Now, one thing I will say, the zombies, they move very slow. They only move 2. They only have 8 defense, and they got 2 health. But if you do walk up to them, so if you attack them from close, they have Devour. One enemy at range 1, plus 3 to hit, so not a great bonus. But they deal 4 damage. That's like half a Staghar. That's significant. So it's something you want to keep in mind, that it's not just, easy peasy, I'm just going to take them out. You can't just ignore them. Because one, you take damage if there's 9 of them, and they try to make more. But also that's just, my goodness, they can pile on you, and even though it's a plus 3, they're eventually going to hit, and plus 4 damage is a lot. It's a lot of damage. So that's the first 2 scenarios in the expansion. I'll talk more of the next 2 scenarios, maybe 3. We'll see how many we fit in now that I've kind of set the standard for these. If you want to know more about them, I did post the pictures from the book a couple weeks ago on my Facebook page for WizDad, so you can see what the maps look like, the setups for them. It's pretty neat. I think it's a neat scenario. I can't wait to play through it. I really need to open it and do the unboxing. But that's going to do it for this episode of Gee Whiz. Thanks for hanging out with me, talking Frogmire Coven. Once again, this releases in like 3 weeks at the end of the month, just in time for Halloween. And so, yeah, we'll get through the scenario, see if it's something you would like, something you would want to play. It's, once again, $89.99 on the WizKid site. That's MSRP. But, you might find it cheaper at your local, so on and so on. Once again, it comes out later this month. But thank you guys for listening. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I will see you guys on Friday for HeroClix Friday. See ya.